So Montague, we've been talking about the connection between beloved community and critical storytelling. Where does the triune God fit into this? Specifically, the Holy Spirit. Where are we? How does all this work together in your framework?
Yeah, so in the talk, I did bring in a conversation around pneumatology or a focus on the Holy Spirit. One reason why I did that is, we often don't talk about it, but in King's work, he does bring in a focus on the Holy Spirit. Sometimes he uses language that is not as traditional for the Holy Spirit, language like a unifying force of love. Um, but what we do find in King is that there is a recognition that the Holy Spirit is active and present in this world and seeking to bring about, like actually at work, actively bringing about beloved community. And I think it's important to recognize that because, with all the different practices and little practical tips I talk about in the talk, it's also important to know that at the heart of it is really trusting that the Spirit is at work. I mean, it takes a deep trust that the Spirit is at work. And if we recognize that the Spirit is at work, not only within the walls of the church, but beyond the walls of the church, then it makes room for us to welcome in stories into the life of the church, into our biblical reflections, into our community. It opens up space for us to welcome in the kind of stories that oftentimes are seen as like too much for the church or God forsaken or too risky. But if the Spirit of God, if the Holy Spirit is at work, not only within the walls and the social space of the church, but beyond those physical walls, beyond those social walls, then there is a divine permeation that we get to embrace when we engage critical stories and critical storytelling.
So it's not just us doing it in a silo, right? We're connecting to God's presence in our space and also to God's presence in the world, and you know, extending this a little bit to generations gone before us and generations that will follow us. We're engaging in a really ancient practice here, with God being at the helm, which is nice to think about actually, because sometimes we think we're at the helm, and it can be problematic when we do this work
Mhm.
siloed. So, yeah.